Hello, thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Melissa with 1S, but you can call me Mel, and today I'm excited to share with you my journey with my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. She is one of my plants that I say I revived or rescued because she was not in the greatest condition when I picked her up at the nursery. So in this video I'm going to be talking about from the point I picked her up at the nursery where she was in pretty bad shape to what she looks like today, thriving in my environment. For the second half of this video I will be sharing with you each of the plants that I do have of my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. Not to give you too many spoilers, so definitely stay tuned and watch the full video. So to start off, I do want to talk to you a little bit about when you go to a nursery and pick up a plant, especially a plant that you've been waiting for, that you're excited about, and that was me when I walked into the nursery and wanted to pick up my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. When I did look around at the nursery, there wasn't many to choose from, I would say, that were in good condition or in a prime condition in order to take it home and not have too much worry. They were selected to the point where there was ones that you can tell were in rough shape. They were root bound or pot bound, and it's not ideal when you're bringing your plant home and you know, okay, I'm gonna have to repot it right away because it doesn't have enough soil or enough nutrients in order to continue to grow. So I was looking at a few of them, and a lot of them had the same issues. You know, there was roots coming up from the top, there was plants that were kind of eaten up, or they were pale, and I was just contemplating on whether or not I should even pick one up at that point. So I did go with my boyfriend, and he convinced me, he's the cameraman, he convinced me to pick up this Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. There was two that had more than one plant in the pot, so there was about 2 or 3 growth points in that one pot. I got it for like $25, which is not too bad, especially for where I live. And I'll insert a clip that I did take when I brought it home, or I think it's one when I repotted it, but it's still a good idea for you to see. There was some leaves that weren't doing well, some leaves that were pale, and it was still a full plant where I was excited to see whether or not it would do well in my environment. So from then on, I ended up just letting it acclimate to my space. And again, I'll insert a clip of what that looked like for the plant. But after about a week, I could tell that the plant wasn't doing well. So I'm like, okay, you know what? It's probably time for me to repot it now that it's been acclimated. And that's what I did. I checked the roots, and sure enough, it did have root rot. To be honest, I was not surprised because of the state that the plant was in. So what did I do? I just went right down to the nitty-gritty. I ended up separating that plant. I did some research on how to clean the roots. So what you do is just rinse it off, make sure you get as much soil out as possible from the roots, and then you take some dish soap, antibacterial. I just use a sponge to rinse it off so that it would go through the root ball, because again, it just wasn't looking too good. At that point, I ended up cutting out all the root rot that it did have, because at this point I'm like, okay, I may lose this plant because of the root rot. So I tried my best to clean as much as possible. The other piece that I did was actually take a cutting from the top of one, and I'll actually show you what that looks like today, but I just was super worried that I was just gonna lose the whole plant. So I would definitely recommend, if you do have issues or you're worried about your plant, take a cutting as soon as possible before you start seeing maybe the plant's not doing well. So from there, I took that cutting and I ended up repotting the plant into separate pots as opposed to just all of it together. That way I was able to control the water a bit better, it could drain a bit better, stuff like that. The soil that the plant came in, I was not a fan of it because you could just tell that it was holding a lot of that water and not draining as much as it should. I just put it in my homemade potting mix. Well, it's not really homemade because I just take a bunch of different soils and just put it together. So I put orchid bark, I either put tropical soil or a premium potting mix in it. Also, there is cacti soil option. And then obviously perlite is an important piece for the drainage. So I was able to mix that up and put each plant in its own pot, gave it ample amount of light, and also increase the humidity with my humidifier, watering until the soil is dry or partially dry. So when I put my finger in, it seems pretty dry for the first 2 inches, and then I just water it well. And I just watch the water go through from the bottom. I am going to show you each plant in the different pots that they're in. So making sure you place the plant in a pot that will provide also that drainage. So either has enough drainage holes at the bottom or it's a terracotta pot, and I'll show you some of that with the plants that I have now. Obviously at this point my plants are doing super well. I'm so happy with the result of me just taking action at the beginning, because I think we get worried at the beginning that we may lose our plants. Oh my gosh, they're dead. What do I do? So just do what you can. I'm a true believer that plants are resilient, and as long as you provide them a better home and just clean them up, they will bounce back, and that's what this Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma did for me. By the way, people are pronouncing it differently. So Rhaphidophora, and then I just call it a Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. So whatever you decide to call it, this is what this plant is. So now I'm going to place the plants into the frame. That way you can see what my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma looks like now. Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma.
Okay, go.
Oh, well, I just want you to take Here you have it, my Rhaphidophora Tetraspermas. That one plant turned into quite a few plants. So I'm going to talk about each of them. Specifically, I'll talk first about this clip or this cutting that I decided to take, like I spoke about earlier, just because I was worried that I was gonna lose the plant. So if you haven't also seen my propagation box video, check it out. I'll leave a link here. I talk about this one. I do have it in my propagation box. Since I increased the humidity, the plant has been thriving. So this is the little piece that I took off the plant. It's doing super well, and now I have a little Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma to add to my collection. So I thought this was awesome, because although this was just a caution or preventative just so I wouldn't lose the whole plant, I ended up just experimenting and was able to get a little plant out of it from the cutting. Now this piece was one of the growing points that were in the pot. Thing about this one is that it was a lot shorter than the longer mother plant, I guess I'm going to call it. This is the one where I took the cutting from. So because I did that, it no longer grows upward, it's now growing sideways. I'll try to take a close-up video and put it on the screen right now so that you see now it's like a U shape. It's almost like smiling at me. And at this point, it may end up being two vining plants going upwards. I think that's gonna look super cool. So yeah, so I was able to now get not only one vining section, it's gonna be two on either side. So that's also, I guess, an experiment that I did because I wasn't too sure what was going to happen. So just kind of a tip for you too, if you wanted to start vining sideways, that's what you can do. She's doing really well. There's some fenestrations on some of the newer leaves, and I already have a couple of leaves already growing, and it's just thriving really well. I think the soil medium is super helpful because, like I said, I have the orchid bark in there, perlite, a mix of everything, and it just really works for this plant. Or at least for me, it's been working for my environment. This is one of the longer vining sections, and not only does this one vining section have a lot of leaves, but it also has two growing sections. I don't know what to call it. If you want to leave a comment down below, I guess the vining roots, but there is two. And again, I'll take a pictures and so you have a little bit of a close-up of what it looks like from the back. I'm supporting two of them with just some wood sticks and just some soft tape. It's kind of like Velcro tape where it's the soft in the inside and then Velcro part on the outside. I find it is super helpful to support the plant, but also be a little bit more gentle with not leaving any type of dent on the plant. So this one's doing really well. One thing I want you to see is that these are the older leaves, and you can just tell that they are just more pale than the new ones. They have a little bit of brown spots on it. Now that's not going to change. I'm not too sure if you can see any of the other ones, and the older ones don't have fenestrations either. I'm debating on whether or not I want to remove it, but we'll see. we'll see how I feel once it continues to grow upward. And of course, now all the ones that are up here, they're super healthy. They have the fenestrations that Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma should have. And I'll do a couple of close-ups of some of the newer plants. And it's beautiful, and I'm excited to just vine up my wall. Definitely one of my favorite plants. And for my fourth section, I guess you could say, of my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma, this one is, I would say, the mother plant, or the longest vining part of the plant. It's again just doing so well. I'm not too sure how tall it is, but it's super cool to see that the roots, or the aerial roots, are actually holding onto the bamboo stick, and I've never seen that in person. I'll just do a little bit of a close-up for you so you can see that. And the same thing goes for this one, just like, you know, the pale leaves at the bottom. Some of them were bit or eaten at the bottom here, maybe through transportation to the nursery, you know, maybe got caught on something, who knows. But moving upward, you can see that all the leaves have fenestrations and just looking the way it should, and it's a lot taller than this one. I haven't taken measurements, but I probably should, just so I can keep track of, you know, how quickly they're growing or how tall they are, you know, month to month, for example. So yeah, so they're doing really well, and the pots that they're in, so 2 of them, the bigger ones, are in terracotta pots. That is my preference for a lot of my plants, is just transferring into terracotta pots, because I tend to overlove my plants. It just provides enough drainage and enough oxygen just to kind of flow through the soil as well. And just these little growing pots, they're the plastic ones. Obviously, once this one grows a little bigger, I'll transfer into terracotta. And this one is in a growing pot as well. It's doing good where it is, so I'm not going to move it. I'll probably wait till it's outgrown this pot and then transfer it. I don't want to be moving them too much. So yeah, so that is my Rhaphidophora Tetrasperma. That was one plant from the nursery, and I turned it into a bunch of plants, and I'm excited to see how well she does. So just a little lesson or a little advice: just be patient with your plants, give them a shot, and try to help them out. Probably 90% of the time they will push through and give you some sort of new growth. Just in case they don't, make sure you get a cutting, because at the end of the day, you'll just probably end up with one more plant or have to start from scratch, but at least you have a cutting with you. Okay, so if you have any questions about anything I mentioned, just leave a comment down below. If you have any other tips and tricks on what I can do or better, let me know in the comments as well. All right, take care, and I'll see you soon.